All right, so what we're going to do today, we are going to go over how to write an APU, and we're going to go over some sample grading, the rubric, and all that good stuff. So it's a super important lesson that I just want to make sure that you all are ready to write your first essay. And so I told you guys to say for those watching at home, the first essay that you write is actually going to be the essay we're going over today. But before we go over that, I want to go over some elements of writing that are important, including the rubric and some rules. So pulling up, let me see if I can actually do this, I don't know. Bingo. All right, so pulling up this first screen, I want to talk a little bit about how the essay questions are arranged. So when it comes to the time for your AP exam, you will have a choice of 3 essays. All 3 essays. So there's actually the AP exam, the written part is 60% of your exam score. The first part is what's called the SAQ. We've been working on SAQs in class. I think have we done 1 or 2 this year already? Maybe we did 1 of the tests. And you'll have on your upcoming test, you'll have either 2 or 3 SAQs on this test we're taking next week. The SAQs are kind of short, the ABC, the binary. The second part is the DBQ, document-based question. We're actually not going to write a DBQ until January or February. But the third, and DBQ is actually more important than the LEQ. But the third part, 15% of your exam score, is the long essay question. It'll be the last part of your exam. The reason I like to do the LEQ first, I want you comfortable writing a long essay question before we go to the DBQ. So with the essay question, first off, you're going to have a choice of 3 on the exam. On my tests, there's always going to be a free response on the test. Some days might be short answer, some LEQ. Probably early on, you're not going to have much of a choice of LEQ. In fact, what we'll do is we're going to work our way into it. This first LEQ, for example, we're going over before you write it. The next LEQ, I'll actually give you the prompt before you write it, and let you go over at home and come in with like an outline. The third one, I'll give you the prompt. You can't come in with an outline. Kind of we'll work our way up to the point where you can actually write the LEQ as well. By next semester, I'm no longer giving you that stuff, but kind of, then you'll have a choice of what you'll do as well. And then we'll get into it. Also at the LEQ, and I'll show you the sample prompts in a second. All 3 are going to be focused, and these are important to understand, on what they call historical reasoning processes. And the 3 historical reasoning processes are comparison, continuity and change over time, and causation. So comparison, what are you looking for if you're doing a comparative essay? What are the 2 things you'd be looking for? Similarities and differences. So if you're comparing Spanish treatment of Native Americans with English treatment of Native Americans, yeah. What are the similarities? What are the differences? Word, to let you know, almost every essay prompt that's comparative is going to be phrased something along the lines like evaluate the most significant difference, or evaluate the extent to which blank and blank were different. Notice you're using the word difference versus similarities. Should you still do similarities? Yeah, you want to really do well, you want to focus on both. If you're totally stuck, of course, don't worry about it, because it is the difference, but it's the extent to it something is different, which means it might be somewhat similar. For example, if I were doing evaluate the extent to which Native American treatment of English treatment of Native Americans was different than Spanish treatment of Native Americans, what parts would you say were similar? I don't know if I'd say that they believe in Christianity. I would say they use Christianity to justify what they did. For example, did the English really come in as a government to convert the Indians? What they do? They forced them where? To move which way? West. They forced them west. Yeah, they a few tried, but that wasn't it. The Spanish, they were into conversion. We have the encomienda system, we have the mission system. Does that make sense to everybody? So that's a difference, yet they both use religion to justify exploitation of Indians. Does that make sense to everyone? So that's where you want to kind of try to think that way. Our first essay, by the way, is not comparison. And when we do a comparative essay, I'm going to go over this again with you. Second type of essay is continuity and change over time. And so continuity and change over time, what's the continuity? What do you think historical continuity would be?
progressives.
Some progressive. So, let me give you an example. Oh, well, let's talk about change over time. Change over time is pretty easy, historical change. So I know that you haven't taken this course, but what would you, tell me a political change that women went through in the 20th century? One major change from 1900 to 1990 or 2000 that women experienced regarding politics.
Being able to vote.
Being able to vote. 1900 they couldn't vote. Big change. 2000, by 2000 they can vote. What's another change politically? How else are women, how else has it changed from 1900 regarding politics? Do we have women congresspersons? There are women in Congress, senators, and so forth. They have high offices. There's a big change. Okay. How many think that's fairly easy if you really knew it, of course? Do the change. What's the continuity? Tell me something that's still similar regarding politics and women. Okay. I would call that more of a social belief because that's people's beliefs, but you're on the right track.
More men than women in offices.
Yeah. Women are about 50% of the population. Are they 50% of our politicians? No. So do men still dominate Congress? Okay. That would be a continuity, something that has not changed. And you're going to see those in short answer questions. Short answer questions, it'll ask you continuity, change. So continuity is something that stayed the same, change is something different. Continuity in short answer questions, you'll see similarities, differences. But in essays, you're going to see the word change, but you still want to write about continuities if you can. And you're going to see the word differences, but you still want to write about similarities if you can. Yes?
With like what's going on in the world today, like people are using religion as like a way to like go against someone else. Without even, it's like it's
Continuity.
Yeah.
You know, religion justifies a lot of times, or in people's minds. If you look at, like, say, look at terrorist groups, you know, they're justifying what they're doing through the use of religion. You know, it doesn't mean that all people who are Islamic are terrorists, but it does mean that Islamic terrorists. But, you know, Islamic terrorists are not the only ones. I mean, there's been Christian terrorism. Anyone familiar with the IRA and issues in Northern Ireland that have, you know, just recently come to an end in 2000. So, you know, religion can be used to do that, any type of continuity. And that's why you always want to kind of think like that. But you do want to think continuity change. Okay. The essay you're going to be doing is causation. And there's two types of cause. There's cause and there's also what? Not using the word cause, effects. So a causation is, it could be either cause or it could be effects. Usually it's phrased in a way where it might say, evaluate the relative importance of the different causes, which would mean you're kind of ranking most important, second most important, third most important cause. For example, here, evaluate the relative importance of the different causes of the U.S. Civil War. Now, most of you are familiar with the Civil War. What are the two leading causes that most historians would say that you learned about in 8th grade? Slavery is one. What's the second one?
States' rights.
States' rights. Okay. So if you're evaluating the relative importance, you're going to try to kind of rank them in order. And you're going to have to take a position. Does that mean if you take a position, I'll say personally, I take the position of slavery. To me, without slavery, there wouldn't have been a Civil War. However, I'm taking that position. Do I still think states' rights were important? Yeah, they were very important. So, and it still is that. So you have to take a position, but you have to also recognize it might not be the only position. And that's good. You want multiple causes or multiple effects. All right. And so you'll kind of say, or you might evaluate the extent to which slavery was the cause of the Civil War. Can you talk about states' rights in that essay? Why can you? And you can.
Because states believe that slavery was their own right.
Yeah. And it's also, and you can get an essay, evaluate the extent to which slavery led to the Civil War. And say you're a person who believes more about states' rights. You can actually go against that question. And you can say, no, it's more about states' rights. Slavery was important, but without states' rights. Like I said, I don't agree with that, but it's okay. If you can use evidence to support that, you can do that. And, you know, that is what, and basically when we talk about evidence, something that's defensible. So you can't really write an essay that says the Holocaust didn't occur. Why not? Yeah, it happened. Like, are there sources you could find that say it didn't happen? Yeah. One of the biggest like neo-Nazis in the world used to live in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. Until the 1990s, he got sent to Germany, he's in jail. I think he might be dead now. I don't know. But this guy in Pigeon Forge is doing all this paraphernalia that the Holocaust never occurred. Well, people who follow his website, they believe that. But is it a reputable source? That's why you always want to look at your sources, who's saying something. All right, so those are kind of the process. It's a 6-point rubric for the LEQ. And in this class, a 6 and a 5 are both an A. I actually don't expect you to get, it's really hard to get a 6. It's not really hard to get a 5, but it is really hard to get a 6. I want you to aim for the 6, but I don't want you to be distressed if you don't get the 6. You know, it is really hard. I think sometimes like it's a checklist, you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that 6 is more about quality than it is about anything else. Yes?
Did I hear you say that neo-Nazi included the Holocaust existed?
Oh, yeah, some of them don't. I mean, they'll say it's exaggerated. There's crazy people in the world, unfortunately. And I'm very judgmental. I'm crazy people. I'll be the first to say when someone's crazy or a terrible leader. All right, but your rubric here, 4 is an 80, a 3 is a 35, 2 is a 25, 1 is a 10. You don't get a 1 or 2, you really don't need to do that. You can get on that. But really a 4 is a decent score. 5 is a better score, 6 is a fantastic score. All right, so real quickly, if you want to go through the points of the rubric. So this is where it gets really interesting. Number 1, who knows what a thesis is? Okay, good. So I'm going to ask, I'm going to give you a prompt, and I'm going to say a thesis. I want you to tell me whether that thesis is a thesis or not. Ready? The prompt is evaluate the extent to which slavery led to the Civil War, or slavery was the main cause of the Civil War. Okay. To a great extent, slavery was the most important cause of the Civil War. Thesis or no thesis? Raise your thumbs up, thesis, thumbs down if it's not. You tell John you really want that to be a thesis, don't you?
Yeah.
It's not. It's a bad thesis. What's wrong with it? Can you guys read that part?
No.
All right, I'll read it. Respond to the prompt with a historically defensible thesis claim that establishes a line of reasoning. What is that not doing?
Well, like you did, like,
It's not good line of reasoning. Now, to a great extent, slavery was the most significant cause of the Civil War because slavery divided the nation, and Southerners felt that many of the northern states were against the extension of slavery. Would that be? Is that a line of reasoning? That word because. Okay. And you can even get to like a 2 or 3 sentence. The thesis does not have to be 1 sentence. It can be 2 or 3 sentences. I might get into, if I write an essay, I might say, after the Mexican-American War, and the U.S. gained new territories, there were many conflicts over the extension of slavery to these new territories. The idea of popular sovereignty was used for the Mexican cession, and then it was even applied to the Kansas-Nebraska Act, which made the Missouri Compromise invalid. These issues, contributed to conflict in the states. Indeed, slavery was the most important cause. Notice that's like 3 sentences, but that is actually a good thesis as well. So if you do multiple sentences, you want to have them in a row. They have to connect. And you can still do 1 sentence as long as you explain that. And I always find the best way to really write a simple thesis, if you're struggling, is basically restate the prompt, add the word because, and then actually explain what you're doing. That's the best. Thesis should also be the last part of the introduction. It always is, and you should restate it in the conclusion. And we'll talk about why later on. The next part of your essay is called contextualization. Describes a broader historical context relevant to the prompt. So ready? I'm going to give you a context. I want you to tell me if it's right. Answer the same question. Prior to the Civil War, the U.S. economy was growing different in the different regions. In the North, industrialization was mostly happening in the northern part of the country, and more people working in factories rather than farms. The southern part of the country, however, relied upon agriculture, particularly the growth of tobacco and cotton in this region. And these differences are ultimately going to lead to division between the states. How many would say that that is a context that is relevant to the prompt? Thumbs up if it is, thumbs down if it's not. Don't be afraid to put that thumb up, it's okay. That's great, that's a good sign. If you can do that, I'm really happy. Okay. I'm gonna give you another one. This one's gonna be wrong. I want you to tell me why it's wrong. And by the way, everything I'm gonna tell you is actually correct. So I'm not giving you any false information. Prior to the Civil War, the U.S. was growing and expanding. New territories were acquired in Louisiana and Oregon and the Southwest. These territories made this nation to be one of the largest nations on earth. Furthermore, the U.S. was prosperous during this time. That is not going to get a context. Can someone tell me why not?
It doesn't say anything about like the real cause of the Civil War and like the division or anything.
And it doesn't have to, but it's not even connected. It's not relevant. Now, if I add on that whole thing, like, I forget where did I leave off? I think I said it was a different, different territories. Okay. Issues over, if I have one more sentence, issues over these territories regarding slavery began to divide Americans. And then I go to my thesis, that would actually make work. So it's almost like you need context, transition, thesis. So where should the context be in your paper? In the intro before your thesis. Like if you can do really context, intro, and thesis, that's gonna work out perfect.
So like your context is like the facts and like the.
Well, what's going on? Like you could use like spray or something like that. Have we done spray in here? Characteristics of an area? We're gonna start that. Okay, we'll start that next unit. The kind of things that are going on, but it has to be relevant to the prompt. Like notice when I did, like I just talked about expanding, but I never like related it to the prompt. It didn't count.
Okay.
So you wanna like, you don't wanna just have like, you know, you don't wanna just have like everything I said was true, but you have to have it, the relevance. All right. Then we get into these next ones. So the easiest point to get in an essay is the C1. Provide specific examples of evidence relevant to the topic of the prompt. Okay. The word example, singular, plural. So how many examples do you give? At least two. Honestly, if you throw in, if you're doing that essay and you throw in the Compromise of 1850 and the Kansas-Nebraska Act, there's our two pieces of evidence. You pretty much have it. This next part, though, is where it gets tricky. Supports an argument in response to the prompt using specific and relevant examples of evidence. So I want to use that evidence, but now I've got to make it into an argument. So I will tell you the best way to make an argument in an essay. Every paragraph begins your argument with a clear topic sentence. So for example, the Compromise of 1850 intensified the debate between abolitionists and those who favored abolition and those who favored slavery. Notice I'm laying out the argument. Okay. Then I'm going to give my evidence what the Compromise of 1850 did. You know, issues of popular sovereignty and fugitive slave law. And then I'm going to have another concluding sentence at the end of that paragraph that sums up, you know, brings it together. You know, indeed, because of the issues of popular sovereignty, because of the new stringent fugitive slave law created by the Compromise of 1850, many Northerners who had turned a blind eye towards slavery were now adamantly opposed to slavery. So notice I kind of gave my topic sentence, stated the argument, give my evidence, explained it. That's usually going to be several sentences. And then I kind of concluded, wrapped it all together with the concluding sentence. Does that make sense to everyone? If you do that consistently, that'll help you. Another thing, how many have taken classes where like you try to write creatively? and to get fancy with your words. Anyone? Don't do that. Like, don't change the words, use the words it's asking for. You know, if it's saying about slavery, just say, the Compromise of 1850 increased debates over slavery, which led to the Civil War. You know, just, it's really keep it simple. You don't want to get fancy. How many have read books before where the language is so fancy you don't have to read it? You know, we don't need that. And if, like, when we're peer grading or if I'm grading, no one wants to go on a journey through the dictionary to read an essay. Yeah, that's just really not fun. So kind of keep it nice and simple. All right, the last part is analysis and reasoning. And so this D1 uses historical reasoning, for example, comparison, causation, continuity, and change to frame or structure an argument that addresses the prompt. So if the prompt is that the slavery is causing civil war, and you're using the word causation all the time, and you're relating slavery to the Civil War, are you using historical reasoning to connect it to the prompt? Yeah, you are. If that's the prompt is asking, you want to make that real clear. It all depends on the question asked. So once again, don't change the word. If the word asks for cause, use cause. If it asks for effect, use effects. Continuities, changes, and so forth. You know, make it very clear. This next part, this is the toughest point. It's the toughest point to get. It's known as the complexity point. And notice all this stuff up here. And I really should have given you one, although it is online. I didn't think to make a copy, but I will make a copy. But this complexity point, where it gets all done, there's different ways you can get it. So I'm going to read some of this to you. To earn this complexity point. So first of all here, demonstrates a complex understanding of a historical. By the way, you will always have a rubric when you're doing an essay. You have it in front of you. I'll leave it to you. Or it'll be online. Demonstrates a complex understanding of historical development that is the focus of the prompt, using evidence to corroborate, qualify, or modify an argument that addresses a question. So real quick, evidence to corroborate. What does that mean? It's a big word. Anyone want to take a guess? Basically, if you're saying that slavery was the cause of the war, your evidence is going to support that. Corroborate or qualify an argument. Does that make sense? Modify an argument. That's where it gets a little tricky. What if you think states' rights? That would be modifying it. The question is asked, was slavery? No, it was not slavery, it was states' rights. So is it okay to modify an argument? Yep. Here, though, is where it gets tricky. Explains the nuance of an issue by analyzing multiple variables. Explains both similarity and difference, or explains both continuity and change, or explains multiple causes, or explaining both causes and effects. Explains relevant and insightful connections within and across time periods, confirming the validity of an argument by corroborating multiple perspectives. We're going to make this easy. The best way, the simplest way to get complexity, and the way I would advise you to try to get it, and you're probably not going to get it right away, you might come up with a counterpoint. So evaluate the extent to which slavery was the main cause of the Civil War. If you do multiple causes, slavery was important, it was the main cause. States' rights, however, was also important. Economic difference between the North and South further accentuates this. Despite all of this, however, slavery is the main cause because. That's your complexity point. Okay. Or if you get a question, evaluate the extent to which Spanish treatment of Native Americans was different than English treatment of Native Americans. And you sit there and you say they're mostly different. You know, they were. But you also mentioned the continuities. There are similarities between the two. Similarities. Both similarity and difference. You know, so within your theme, you want to do that. That makes sense? And the same thing with continuity and change. The question is going to ask you in an essay for change. You know, evaluate the extent to which women changed during the 20th century. The role of women changed during the 20th century. You know, women could vote, they hold high offices. Nonetheless, women are still underrepresented and have been underrepresented. Does that make sense to everybody? So that's kind of the way to get that. If you kind of frame your essay in that structure, that'll be the best way to go there. So questions?
All right. So quickly, I want to show you just some sample prompts here. This is from this year's exam. Okay. So I told you I have essay cues, which will be second, start with like a secondary source, will be the first one. The second will either be a visual, which this one is, or it could be a primary source. And then the third and fourth one, you have a choice. There's no stimulus at all. Okay, see, I'm not going to go over that again. I think I went over this. Did I already go over this with you? Okay. Then you'll get your DBQ, which is a document-based question. This one is about economic growth led to changes in U.S. society from 1940 to 1970. There'll be 7 documents, and we'll be working on documents all semester, but we won't do a DBQ until next semester. And then your third will be your LEQ. And notice you have a choice of 3. Notice all 3 are the same reasoning. So there's 3 reasoning processes: continuity and change, causation, and comparison. What are these 3? Either continuity and change, causation, or comparison. Causation. Word fact. You know, and in fact, the question you're going to be doing is the extent to which transatlantic voyages affect the Americans. So it's important to reform activity and the extent to which international conflicts affect the world. Notice all 3 will be the same reasoning process. Also, what do you notice about the questions and the time periods? You only have to do one of these on the exam, but what do you notice about the time periods? They're all different. And it'll be like the early period, middle period, later period. So, you know, kind of what your strengths are when you're actually doing it. So as well. How many feel that you could possibly answer this question if you have right that said this first one? You know, think about what we do. And these were key dates come important. 1492, of course, who sailed the oceans blue. What happened in 1607? Are there really big key date here? Jamestown, very good. So through Jamestown. What came first, Jamestown or Plymouth? Jamestown. What came first? Plymouth or Massachusetts Bay Colony? Plymouth. I'm not going to require to know the dates for Plymouth and Massachusetts. But you should know that it came after Jamestown. You should know Plymouth came first. Kind of chronology is more important. Our next key date after 1607 is actually going to be 1676. Anyone know what happened in 1676? It was something, biggest revolt in colonial America, Bacon's Rebellion. So I like that because that tells you after that, if you know that, Bacon's Rebellion by itself is not important to another day, but if you know that, what's going to emerge after? What's the big result of Bacon's Rebellion? How does colonial America change?
The introduction of slavery.
Not introduction. Slaves came in 1619, but
Getting rid of indentured servitude.
yeah, the transition from indentured servitude to slavery, and become part of it. Okay. So this is what you'll see on your exam. Now, in going here, there's some formal writing rules. These are on the homepage on Canvas, and you can look at them later. I'm going to just go over a couple because I'm going to be 100% honest with you. I expect all of your essays to be rough drafts, meaning if you make a mistake, what do you do? Scribble it out, you know, cross out, as long as it's legible. Like, you know, if there's lots of mistakes, can you still scribble them out? Yes, that's fine. It's a rough draft. With that said, there are also, within these rough drafts, sorry, made me log in here. Within these rough drafts, even though they are, I found some things, so I don't know, I told you, I'm actually, people grade the exams, they call me AP readers. I'm actually an AP reader for European history, not US, and I'm in leadership. I've been doing it for like 20 something years. So there's no rules on, like, if you make tons of grammatical mistakes, you can still get a good score. There's no rules, like you're not punished for spelling, you're not punished for grammar. I might punish you for spelling or grammar, but you're not going to be punished in the exam. However, I say that, how many of you ever met a person and you had a really negative first impression, and then you meet them and like you're kind of in your mind, you're like, I don't think I like this person. Have you ever done it before? So there are some rules I want to go over with you on writing that what it does, it just leaves, it makes, how many of you ever rolled your eyes when someone told you to do something that is stupid? You want to make a teacher roll their eyes when they're grading your work, then some of these rules are what will do. So for example, number 1, you know, use only third person pronouns. So don't say that I believe slavery was the most important cause of the war. No one cares what you believe. Just say slavery was the most significant cause of the war because. Does that make sense? So number one's kind of a biggie. Quite honestly, no one cares what number two. Use contraction. It's a rough draft. You can even use like a plus symbol for and. No one's gonna get upset about that. You know, it's a formal essay, but it's a rough draft of a formal essay. Okay. Number four, whenever possible, stay within the same tense. That's another one. You're not going to penalize, but in English, what tense do you write in? In English classes. Present tense. When you're studying history, what do you study? So how should you write it? So once again, it's just kind of one of those things that will just poison readers against you. And then number 7 and number 11 are total pet peeves. Number 7, there are lots of reasons for the Civil War. Don't say that. That sounds terrible. Or many things led to the Civil War. And I'm actually guilty of that. Like when I talk sometimes, I'll go, many, and that's really just not good writing. And once again, it's not going to make it you, you're not going to necessarily do terrible in the essay, but it's that first impression. Readers reading it, and they see those things, and they're like, and most readers are actually looking to give you points. They read so many terrible essays that when they get a really good one, they want to reward you for it. But those are probably the biggest ones that I have. For me, another big rule, use only blue or black ink. I think I told you that already, we talked why. And then writing the margins on either side of the page is really important to me as well. And have you ever written an essay before, or written and like you purposely like move the margins inward to make it like look like you have more pages, or you write bigger? So has anyone done that before? Yeah, don't do that. Honestly, I will tell you this. If you write 6 pages of BS, it's only going to irritate a reader if they're going to read 6 pages of BS. They'd rather just see the answer. With that, the inevitable question, how long is a good essay? The cliche answer, it's all about quality. The reality, it really is all about quality, but most good essays are 1 1/2 pages to 2 1/2 pages of normal size handwriting. So how do you write really small? Write really small, probably a little less. How write really big? Probably a little more. You know, average size, normal size handwriting, about 1 1/2, 2 1/2 is normally good. I've been essays that have been shorter that have gotten 6, and essays longer that have gotten 1. But, you know, that's kind of it. And then I also will tell you not to write on the back of the page in class, just because it's harder to grade. So those are pretty much the biggest formal rules I want you to follow in writing. And we're not necessarily worried too much about that. The other suggested construction of essays, and this is on there. This is, I think, really important for you when you're actually writing and going through it. So suggested construction, okay, and I think I already told you, in the rubric, what are the first 2 points that should be in your introduction? Context and thesis, exactly. You know, and what's this say right here? Context, thesis. Thesis, how many sentences? 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, does it matter? So in this particular case, I wrote B plus C equals thesis. If you want to have a 3 or 4 sentence thesis, that's fine. If you want to just do 1 sentence, that's fine. As long as your thesis establishes a line of reasoning. I'm really flexible there. How many of you struggle writing a thesis? Or how many would say writing is not your strong suit? You want to improve your writing skills? I would say start out writing a 1 sentence thesis with word response and try to explain it, and progress to something better. How many feel that you're really pretty good, pretty proficient writers? If you're really pretty proficient, you want to write a little more, that's also okay as well. It would work there. But that's it. Your introduction should get you a 2 on the essay. If you write nothing but an introduction, and if you do it right. So remember, context, transition, thesis, we got our intro. Body paragraphs are going to vary. So remember what I said, if you want to establish an argument, what should be the first sentence of every body paragraph? What is the topic sentence? What should it support? Thesis. You have your evidence in the middle, and what should be the last sentence of every body paragraph? Concluding summative sentence, once again, directly linked to the thesis or prompt. Kind of the example that I gave you. All right, now, here's where it also gets tricky, organization. The best way to organize it is really option A. If you're doing a comparative essay, theme 1, theme 2, theme 3, compare, contrast. Continuity and change, theme 1, theme 2, theme 3, continuities, changes. We're going to talk about that later in the year when we do this. But our first 3 essays will do one of each type. But the first essay is causation. For a causation question, cause and effect, multiple causes, multiple effects. If you have 2 or 3 themes that are right in the paper, that's going to be enough. Body paragraphs number could vary. I always say the magic number is 3, but honestly, if you can do it 2, that's fine. You know, if you have a 2.5-page paper, you've written 2 big themes, you've written all about slavery and states' rights, you don't have to include something else just to make a third body paragraph. If you could think, and that's what I kind of said, if you can, like, when you're like brainstorming your essay, like, oh, you know, Civil War most important causes, slavery, states' rights, economic differences, boom, you know, that's fine, use those 3. But if you're like slavery, states' rights, and you can't think of something, just go with 2. You will be fine, I promise. As well. The other thing about 2, so you guys all remember SCAR, right? When you use a piece of evidence, try to use SCAR when applicable. That's another way to get that complexity. So for example, if you use, say we're talking about Civil War and issues over slavery, and I'm going to use the Kansas-Nebraska Act as evidence. What was it? Subject. Why? What happened? What were the results? If you can include that when you're writing, it's only going to show the reader that you're better at analysis as well. And so that's the way I would write it. And then, of course, a conclusion that restates your topics. I don't know why I wrote topic sentence. I got to fix that. So restate thesis there. I don't know why I did that. And restate evidence. I had to fix it. Conclusion basically restates your thesis and kind of concludes your essay. Okay. How many of you are good at writing conclusions? How many are okay at it? The reason I say that, how many of you, when you write, you kind of start out kind of shaky, you get better as you write, something like that. So that's one of the reasons I'm saying this. When they actually read them, say that you do a cruddy job with your thesis, but then you write your thesis again, restate your thesis in conclusion, and you kind of gotten your act together with that writing, which a lot of kids do. They're instructed to, the intro should be either, the thesis should be either the intro or the conclusion. And they're going to look at both places for it. And so as you're going through, like if you're that person that gets better when you write, I was that person that got better as I wrote. Like I tended to, like I was at really good conclusions. And I kind of okay introductions. And part of that was, I think, once I got to the groove, it just got better. If you're that person, that's great. How many usually start out pretty strong? If you're the person who starts out strong, I wouldn't worry as much about the conclusion. Nonetheless, restate your thesis. It's never going to hurt. Put it in different words. All right. So any questions there? Yes.
So for the conclusion, after we say our thesis, what do we put? What do we put?
Well, restate your thesis, maybe another brief explanation why. You know, go back, kind of like conclude your essay, like, you know, so my conclusion, okay. You know, indeed, slavery was the most significant cause of the Civil War because it was very unlikely that the U.S. when it went to Civil War had the issues only been about tariffs and differences between the North and the South. The South relied upon slavery. Plantation owners in the South relied upon slavery plantation owners in the South relied upon slavery for their economics, and those same plantation owners dominated Southern legislatures, thus ensuring that when they felt slavery was threatened, they would secede from the Union, and thus the beginnings of the Civil War. So I just kind of wrapped it up there. And that's it. If you could wrap it up, that's great. That's what you want to do. When you're in a time situation, when you're actually writing something AP exam, you're supposed to have 40 minutes to write it. Some of you might only have 20 minutes. And at that point, I'm going to tell you to kind of like slow it, like skip your conclusion. Unless you're that person that just writes a great conclusion where I'll say,
Where's the question located?
I think it's right here. There it is. And it'll be something that you'll turn in paper. And also, if you go back to the home page on Canvas, if you want to look at it while you're home, the much bigger rubric, LEQ rubric, is right there. And it's probably not going to work for some reason. Oh, it is working on this computer. There's a much bigger one,
But
but
I'll give you a copy of this on Monday. I'll make sure. it prints. So you have it. Other questions, guys? Everyone have a good weekend? You're so quiet. Real quick, for the people who are absent, who's friends with any of them? Anyone friends with Emmy? Who are you friends with that's absent? Can you explain to her about AP Classroom? I think you can include that in this video.
actually, let me turn Zoom off here at this point.